Hey, Garth Hamilton, Donald Trump is taking America out of the Paris Agreement to cut our emissions. That means the top three emitters, that's China, the US and India, and they pump out more than half the world's emissions just between the three of them. They won't be bound by that agreement anymore to cut their emissions. Indonesia isn't either. But we are. Now, does that make sense? Who are we trying to impress? Should we also pull out of the Paris Agreement?
Well, firstly, who are we trying to impress? I'm not sure we're impressing the average Australian who's going through a cost of living crisis. I can assure you, Andrew, that's the number one issue that people are raising with me. Look, I think we should be looking very closely and watching very closely at what our most closest and most trusted ally, the United States, is going to do in the short future. When we made that commitment, Andrew, a lot has changed since. And I want to raise with you four very important things that have changed that underwrote our commitment at the time. Firstly, the Great Artesian Basin project. Through carbon capture, this was going to solve a lot of our problems. That project has fallen away. The Burdekin Pumped Hydro project, anyone watching the Queensland political scene will have seen that that project's fallen away and was a complete farce when we looked into it. The green hydrogen fever dream that struck us for a while there, that's moved on as well. People are walking away from that as quickly as they can. And when we made that commitment, Snowy 2.0 looked like it was actually going to be completed. We shouldn't be afraid of change. We should always, every government, should be putting the concerns of the Australian people first, and that's how we should judge any policy position. And I'll point out, policy positions aren't set in stone. Look at nuclear. We're trying to change that right now. And I think we're doing that because we think it's in the best interest of the Australian people. That's what should guide every government's decisions.
Well, you're right to point out that a lot of the alternative green energy schemes the government has been backing have fallen over or gone way over budget. If you want a lesson about being blind to the economies of green solutions, look at the German government. It's just collapsed, heading to a snap election in February. It's collapsed after Germany's finance minister was sacked last week after declaring Germany's economy was in such a mess that it had to dump its own emissions targets. Green policies were killing jobs like they're doing here. Daniel, what does all this tell you?
Well, Andrew, Germany is not a boutique Nordic nation, that the climate zealots like to point to. It's a serious industrial manufacturing powerhouse and sophisticated advanced manufacturing. And, they're seeing the writing on the wall here. They're seeing the economic reality, which is they cannot maintain their economic base. They cannot maintain their leverage throughout Europe and the broader world under these green energy policies. I mentioned before the geopolitical component that Germany has had to face, which is its dependency on Russian gas. And that's a lesson to us not to be dependent upon the infrastructure coming in from China for solar panels and wind turbines, because we could face a very similar issue in the not too distant future. So, as I said before, Andrew, net zero is dead. When we look around the world and the policy actions being taken by governments, it shows that they no longer believe in what they were saying only 3 or 4 years ago, exactly as Garth was pointing out. So much has changed in the world. And I really do think that Donald Trump's decision to remove America from the Paris Climate Agreement is going to be a catalyst for more global leaders to come out and say, hey, enough is enough. We've got to put our citizens ahead of this global climate zealotry that's running our economies and our societies into the ground.